Mummy's with the maggots now.
Is Evil Dead Rise good? Well, when you compare it to the rest of the franchise, the Evil Dead series is the most consistent horror franchise out there. Whether you've got Evil Dead 1, 2, Army of Darkness, the remake, or now this, and Ash vs. Evil Dead included in there as well. And so, looking at it throughout that whole series, when you compare some of the tropes that go along, is Evil Dead good? So let's answer that in this review. Evil Dead Rise is directed by Lee Cronin. It was written by Lee Cronin as well, and it seems like they were the hand-picked person to do this after Fede Alvarez did the excellent remake in 2013. It stars Lily Sullivan as Beth. It stars Alyssa Sutherland as Ellie, Morgan Davies as Danny. It stars Gabrielle Eccles as Bridget and Nell Fisher as Cassie, among other cast members. And the cast here really has to do a lot of the heavy lifting because this is one of those movies where, like the other Evil Dead films, besides Army of Darkness really, it's contained to one area. It's contained to this high-rise building, and so watching Evil Dead, you might sit there and go, isn't Evil Dead about cabins in the woods? It's kind of the original Cabin in the Woods movie, right? Well, it does work in this setting because it still does contain itself to the 13th floor of this condemned sort of apartment building that the family is getting kicked out of. The performances here, let's get to those because they're what really drives the film. Alyssa Sutherland is heartbreaking, is devilish, is frightening, maniacal, gross, evil, like everything horrifying that you can think of in this film, and she carries it as Ellie, who's the first person to get possessed after the kids find the second volume of the Necronomicon, the Book of the Dead. So when you're looking at what she does in the film, it really, she drives that sort of villain role where, you know, the demon is really the villain, but they're taking over Ellie's body. And the rest of the cast, Lily Sullivan as Beth is great. She's badass. She carries the film as the sort of, you know, final girl of the film, and the rest of the kids are great. They do a good job with what they're given. They do a good job as child actors, is reacting to family members getting attacked, neighbors getting attacked, and so it feels like a lot bigger of a film than it is because the cast does such a good job here. It subverts your expectations, which you're going into this expecting certain things out of an Evil Dead film. You're going to get those things, but it does take those and it sort of changes them a little bit. And so that's what Evil Dead Rise does really well. It does those things that you expect are going to happen, that you expect somebody to get horribly mutilated and, you know, really, really messed up in this movie. And trust me, people do get messed up in this movie. They get screwed up physically, mentally, whatever else. And so there's lots of blood and gore. There's lots of, it's a nice mix of CGI and practical effects. The makeup in the film, oh my gosh, the makeup is top notch. If the Oscars actually had a spine and actually wanted to nominate horror movies, they would nominate this movie for an Academy Award for makeup because it is fantastic. It is horrifying in every single way. It's realistic as it gets, especially the possession and all of that and the other people that get possessed in the film. It's mean-spirited. This movie is mean-spirited in every single way possible, and it just knows what buttons to push. It knows who to screw with. It knows what to screw with. It knows what to do. Lee Cronin and the rest of the crew here have it down to a science on how to scare you, how to unsettle you, how to disturb you, because this movie is all three of those things. And I know Evil Dead 2 is, you know, more comedy than horror. Evil Dead 1 is more horror, and Army of Darkness might as well be a comedy movie with horror stuff in. The remake does the same thing where it's horrifying in plenty of ways, and Evil Dead Rise does that, and it takes it up a notch even. There's a scene that is just jaw-dropping, breathtaking when it's happening, and you're going, this isn't actually happening on screen. And so it takes all that gruesome stuff that you get in this film, and it just adds it together and smashes it into this just wonderful horror movie that is frightening. It is so refreshing to have a horror movie that is actually terrifying, and you know, it doesn't ever go into that territory where it's winking at you. You know, no, it knows it's terrifying, it knows you're terrified, and it's not going to give you any edge. The parts where Evil Dead Rise are lacking is some of the characters get swept under the rug. They get swept up in everything, and you know, you don't get as much to work with here as you would like to from some of the characters in the film. Some of the other kids get lost in the shuffle, especially as the film goes on. Then the other characters don't really get anything really. There's a guy that's a neighbor that's sort of vaguely religious. There's an across the hall neighbor that's sort of toolsy and kind of weird, and the characters surrounding everything don't get as much to do, and they kind of are just fodder, which works, but you'd like a little bit more. The story feels a little too similar to other Evil Dead movies, and I know that you have to kind of have the frame of people find book turns people into evil things, and then that happens, but it does do enough outside of that. So those are kind of small quibbles to make with Evil Dead Rise. And don't get me wrong, Evil Dead Rise is an exceptional horror movie. It uses the tropes of the horror of the franchise really well. You have a chainsaw in the film. There's a recording of people talking about the Book of the Dead and all of that. The book itself is a nice design. It's a nice change in design from the classic Raimi one and even the one in the remake. It has teeth on the side of it that are horrifying looking. The images are horrifying. Everything about it is creepy, and it does that better than the original movies do, especially with the book. The recordings themselves that they hear in the film that are played are some of the scariest parts of the film, especially when the kids find it and they're listening to it, and there's just tension that's just there, and it sits on you like on your chest, like you can't breathe because you feel along with these characters and you're going, oh God, please just stop. Multiple times throughout the movie, I put my arms on my head and I was going, oh no, please stop. Just make it stop. Stop doing what you're doing. What are you doing? Stop it. And it's that kind of stuff that makes Evil Dead Rise and separates it from the rest of the horror pack. The film is terrifying. It's great. I want to watch it again because I want to go back through and see if there's anything that I missed, or just stuff that I missed because I was going, oh, please, God, stop. Don't make it. Just make it stop, because it's so scary. Most importantly, Evil Dead Rise gives the audience what they want. It gives you what you want. You have a chainsaw, like I said before. It gives you what you want out of an Evil Dead movie, and it does it so well, so exceptionally well, that you can't help but love it. And so, giving Evil Dead Rise a rating, I would give it a 94 out of 100. It does just enough wrong in that story department to where it takes it down a little bit, but it fits right up there with some of the best entries in the series. It is terrifying. It is in such poor taste, and it's so amazing to watch, and it's so amazing to see a movie like this these days that is just so brutal in what it does. It starts off immediately, and you're in, and you're like, wow, I'm watching an Evil Dead movie. There's no sort of, oh, la 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 la, we're driving to the cabin and we're having so much fun and Bruce Campbell has a unibrow. No, there's nothing like that. It starts off, it's in poor taste, and it's amazing. Evil Dead Rise releases in theaters this Friday. Go check it out in theaters. See it in a room full of people, because it's so much fun and so terrifying. And so if you like more videos like this and you like horror movie content, make sure to check out this entire playlist that I have of all of my horror movie stuff, and you won't regret it.